What's going on, guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC best bets and props. This time it's for the big pay-per-view card, UFC 274 this Saturday. Charles Oliveira defending against Justin Gaethje. A lot of fun fights in the card and a lot of fun betting spots too. Some spots have lost their value at this point in the week since this is such a high-profile card. A lot of eyes on it, a lot of people in the gambling market moving these lines around. But there's still some very confident fighters I have in this card. Some good props I like in this card too that I'm pretty sure will hit. So let's get into it. Starting with a couple of my most confident fighters. Both of these guys I find to be, pretty confident to come through, parlayable even. So that's starting with Andre Fialho, who is a minus 400 favorite, even higher in some books, but right around minus 400 is where I have been able to find him at most recently. He's facing a newcomer to the UFC, Cameron Van Camp, who is the plus 300 underdog. And this just comes down to levels. This comes down to level of experience. Cameron Van Camp is a guy who is making his debut on short notice here. Both guys fairly short notice, but Cameron Van Camp has been on the regional scene in a lot of different states, some Tennessee promotions, some Kentucky promotions, even in the Midwest he's been. So he's been around the block quite a bit, but mostly lower, competition regional scene. So his record might look decent at the first glance, but if you watch some of these fights, he's very, very hittable on the feet, very defensively liable to get hit quite a bit, even by lesser tier competition than he's going to face at the bottom level of the UFC. He's got a very slick submission game if he can get the fight into that world, but I don't see him getting past Andre Fialho. I think this will be a first-round finish for Andre Fialho, who had a sordid past himself and mixed results in Bellator, PFL, and the LFA, but still, that's his regional scene experience out of the UFC. There's Bellator, PFL, and LFA, just a higher level of competition there. Now he's at Sanford MMA, one of the best camps in the game. He's coming off of his opening fight in the UFC was against Michel Pereira on very short notice, and he made a decent account of himself in a loss. Had Pereira in trouble, persevered through extreme fatigue in rounds 2 and 3, and showed a lot of heart. Then he comes in against Miguel Baeza, who was kind of a rising prospect at 170, and knocked him out in round 1. So I have a feeling that he can knock out Cameron Van Camp in round 1. Unfortunately, I'm not finding a lot of specific props for this fight quite yet, and it's pretty late in the week. So I'd like to look for a round 1 KO prop for Andre Fialho, which I would expect if I were to bet on that, I'd want it to be plus 275 or better. I haven't quite seen that prop out there yet. Even inside the distance, might be a good look for this fight. The way I could see this going wrong for Fialho is if for some reason he can't get Cameron Van Camp out of there, which I find unlikely due to how hittable the guy is. But if he fatigues like he did against Pereira, there is a chance he could fall to the slick submission game of Cameron Van Camp. But this just comes down to level of experience, and I think it's night and day. I think Fialho is pretty much warranted of a minus 300 or a minus 400 price tag here, and I think he's parlayable. And I wouldn't mind parlaying him with the next guy on my list of most confident fighters at UFC 274, which is Brandon Royval, taking on Matt Danger Schnell at 125. So Brandon Royval currently around like a minus 250, 260 favorite. That line has just gone up and up. You probably could have gotten him around like 220, minus 220, minus 230. Late last week or early this week, but I still think that it's a decent price for him. He's performed well. He had a good run in the LFA promotion before coming to the UFC, and since then in his 5 fights in the UFC, he's looked very good. Made a name for himself, beating guys like Tim Elliott, Kai Kara France, who are pretty good wins in hindsight. Only losing to Brandon Moreno, who was a former champion, and that was due to injury in round 1. I think his shoulder got hurt in that fight, and then losing to Alexander Pantoja, who's always a top 10, top 5 guy in the division. So not that bad. Even in his last fight, he looked a little off. He faced Rogerio Bontorin, who gave him some trouble, but he battled back and won the later rounds of that fight. Won the fight. Split decision win, but I think it was a pretty decent win. And Rogerio Bontorin is the guy who beat Matt Schnell. So Matt Schnell kind of is, even at 125 and the power those guys pack, he's still very chinny. He's been knocked out by like Hector Sandoval, Rob Font. When he faces these upper tier guys, Alexander Pantoja, Bontarine, he really can't quite cut it with these upper tier guys. He'll beat guys like Louis Smolka and the like, but once he faces that upper level competition, he's not really cutting it. That coupled with how chinny he is against a high volume striker in Brandon Royval, I don't see it going well for him. And further on that point, he's been matched up against Alex Perez for like the past year, and that fight never materialized due to weight cut issues on both sides. And it just doesn't seem very good. I wonder if he'll make weight for this fight or if something weird will happen. Hopefully this fight pans out because I am very confident in Brandon Royval. This brings me to the props side of things. We might as well just start off with the relevant one that we've been talking about. Brandon Royval inside the distance at minus 110. Brandon Royval, out of his 13 wins, 11 have been inside the distance wins. Pretty good percentage for him. If I think he's going to win, I think he can finish, the chinny Matt Schnell as well, either by KO, TKO, or by like a club and submission type of scenario. Along with that point, Matt Schnell has only lost 5 times. 3 of those have been by knockout. 1 of those losses has been by submission. So, when he loses fights, the higher percentage, 80%, have been inside the distance as well. So, moving on to the next prop that I find likely to hit is Blagoy Ivanov versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima, which is going to be just a weird fight to watch. But that fight not going to decision at minus 145. Not a bad price for heavyweights in general not to go to decision. This is mostly due to Marcos de Lima's gas tank failing him later in the fight is how I see this playing out. I think he's going to be forced to stand on the feet, which is where he's got, most of his finishing ability too. Usually early in fights, he'll sprint at guys, try to get him out of there, just like he did against Ben Rothwell in less than a minute in his last fight. He's going to have trouble getting Ivanov out of there, but if there's a possibility for him to win the fight, I think that's how, he's going to have to bum rush him, get him out of there. Notoriously hard to do against Ivanov. Unlikely even, but Ivanov has not been in the cage for almost 2 years, so, who knows how this guy's looking, who's had a lot of miles on him fight-wise. But I think Ivanov wins this fight. I think eventually he lumbers through and survives the early onslaught of De Lima. And in rounds 2 or 3, when De Lima has no energy left whatsoever, I think Blagoy Ivanov will either find some easy submission on the ground, or some ground and pound situation and knock him out there. So I don't see this fight going to decision. And for minus 145 on that prop, that is not very bad at all. I think the prop is a little bit lower in price because so far in the UFC, Ivanov has been only to decision. But if you look at his past, he's finishing a lot of guys, and I think De Lima is the type of bottom of the barrel heavyweight that he can finish even after a 2-year-long layoff. Moving on to another time prop, so to speak, is Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson, over 1.5 at minus 155. Over 1.5 rounds, only having to get through 7.5 minutes in this fight. Tony Ferguson is not a guy to be finished early. He's not a guy to be even finished that often either. So, this is really just like a look at how Michael Chandler fights. He's a fast starter. He's a very powerful guy. But I think that just the size difference between these guys can kind of pad the ability of Michael Chandler to get in range early. And just how durable Tony Ferguson has been in the past. Not many of his fights are ending inside the distance, much less under 7.5 minutes is all we have to get through for that prop. At minus 155, not that bad. Even potent finishers like Charles Oliveira that he fought. I mean, he's one of the few guys recently that's actually taken Charles Oliveira to a decision, So that's just the way I see this going. At this price, if this was priced higher at like a minus 200 or something like that, it might be a little bit risky since Tony Ferguson seems to have fallen off a little bit recently, to say the least. But, I just see at minus 155, I'm going to take the gamble on that for just 7.5 minutes of cage time. After that over 1.5, you can take the fight doesn't go to decision, but that's when I would start to have questions about how crazy this fight could get. Could Ferguson pull something off on the ground later in the fight when Chandler's tired? Could Chandler finish off Ferguson, if Ferguson fades late? That I don't know, but over 1.5 I'm pretty confident in. So give me that prop at minus 155. those are the 3 props I like. The 2 fighters I find parlayable. And also, there's a few underdogs that I like, but the price has kind of missed us at this point in the week. I liked Melissa Gatto when she was more of like a plus 140, plus 150, even the high plus 130s as an underdog, because I find this fight between her and Tracy Cortez to be pretty evenly matched. Almost like a coin toss sort of scenario if this goes to decision. And I would like to be in the plus money side of that. So I still am predicting Melissa Gatto. I still like her as an underdog, but I probably wouldn't bet her at anything under plus 130 as an underdog. But if you bet her, I agree with you there. I think she does come off with the victory here. This is kind of a cheating underdog right here, but Danny Roberts technically is like a minus 105 or a plus 100. More of a pick'em fight, but, as an underdog to defeat a guy who's, almost 44 years old at welterweight in Francisco Trinaldo, I would take that and what I see to be a coin toss fight as well, being the plus money side of that. The third one that I do like is, even though I think Norma Dumont probably has the skills to win this fight, Macy Chiasson is climbing up to north of plus 200. If you get her at those numbers, I wouldn't hate that bet either. Taking her to win by decision, you could probably juice that up even higher, but just Macy Chiasson to win. She's like a real 145er. I mean, she missed 145 in her last fight and actually weighed in closer to 150. So the fact that she's kind of like a real featherweight, something that Norma Dumont has not really had to face that often, and when she has, she's really gotten into trouble, like Megan Anderson and things like that. I still think that Norma Dumont, I've liked what I've seen from her more than I've liked what I've seen from Macy Chiasson, but I gotta say, I think the value side of things is on Macy Chiasson. So if you're a value bettor, I think she's on the good side of the probability to make this competitive and probably come out with a victory, more than the money line would indicate. So anything north of plus 200 on Macy Chiasson, I wouldn't hate that bet, but nothing I'm rushing to the ticket window for. So those are really the wrapping up all the bets for UFC 274 that I like this week. If you're watching Bellator 280 tomorrow night, these are some parlayable fighters that I like. I like Soren Beck. I like Ryan Bader. I like Mike Shipman. I like Lorenz Larkin. And for an underdog for Bellator 280, I'm probably on the Alex Easy Polizzi side of things for plus money like he is. I think he's a pretty game fighter. So, all right, you guys, let me know any of the best bets you guys like or disagree with, or any new, big juicy props that you guys have found too. Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like, leave a sub. Good luck on all your betting action this weekend for UFC 274. All right, I'll see you guys. Cheers.